during this Amenhotep II, 18th dynasty, the greatest dynasty that Egyptians had ever seen. From here on out, it goes downhill. I think we decided that there were 36 dynasties, 36, 32, I can't really remember. But it's in the 30s. So this is the Pharaoh that we are dealing with now, okay? And we start off in Exodus chapter 7. This is when all the good stuff starts. A lot of people like to study Exodus just for the next couple of chapters because you start dealing with plagues and you start dealing with Egyptian gods. And we'll look at the gods here on the other side if we've got time. If not, then I don't have to write anything after for the next couple of weeks. I got everything wrote down. All right. God is going to command Moses. Now, the key players that are going to be in this story from here on out until the Exodus, and Exodus means to depart, to move away, to get out. That is where we get our word exit. If you ever see the exit signs, remember Moses, Exodus. That's where we get that from. Exodus. Exit is Latin for Exodus. So next time you see one of them signs, you can think, okay. All right. Key players is going to be Pharaoh, Moses, and God. Not according, of course, not in that order. It's God, Moses, and Pharaoh. But those are your key players in this story. All right. Pharaoh is always a type of the world, the type of the Antichrist, the type of Satan. Because you remember the gods in Egypt at that time were considered, the pharaohs, were considered gods. That is why they were buried with the items that they were buried with, so that when they got to the kingdom, to their other kingdom, that they could rule a certain part of that area. They were considered gods. Moses is going to speak to somebody who he alone, and also Aaron, actually think, everybody else thinks this man is a god, except for these two. The children of Israel, I think, fear him. I think they fear this individual. But you are going to see now Moses step up to the plate, and everything is going to be happening. And it says, and the Lord said, chapter 7, verse 1, okay? And the Lord said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god. I have made thee a god, little g. All right? I have made thee a god. This is what he is saying. And I want you to look to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be a prophet, or shall be thy prophet. In the Hebrew, that word God is also translated prophet in the Hebrew in verse 1 of chapter 7. So you could read that, I have said unto Moses, see, I have made unto thee a priest unto Pharaoh. And there is a difference between a priest and a prophet. They are not the same person, or they don't have the same goals, they don't have the same task. A prophet speaks for God. Okay? He has a message from God to the people. You have the Old Testament prophets. You have the minor prophets, and you have the major prophets. So what a prophet does is he speaks for God. He speaks to a people. God gives him a certain message, and he speaks it to the people. What a priest does is he represents the people before God. Moses is going to be priest, and soon he's going to be prophet also. You'll notice that he represents the people before God when he goes up on the mountain. And God is threatening to destroy all the children of Israel. And Moses acts as a mediator or an attorney or a lawyer and begs God, don't kill these people. So then he is acting as priest. He is an earthly priest. He is a type of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is our heavenly priest. He is our mediator between us and God. So when you pray at night, you pray actually to Jesus Christ, and he takes that to God. But since Jesus Christ is God, it goes directly to God. So if you can figure that out, great. But when you pray, it goes to our mediator. So what a prophet does, he speaks for God. You have all these prophets in the Old Testament. God gives him a certain message, and he goes and speaks it to the people. All right? So what he is saying, it can read like this also. I have made thee a prophet to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy priest. I have made thee a priest, and he shall be thy prophet. All right. This is what he's going to say. Notice God is giving him everything he is going to say. He cannot go wrong. All right?
Can I interrupt you a second? Did you say the God to Moses?
I have made thee, I have made thee a priest, to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. All right? So priest represents God before the people. Prophet speaks for God. All right? A message to the people. Who should have been the prophet? It should not have been Aaron. It should have been who? Moses. So he bellyaches and complains. God says, fine, I'll give you Aaron. All right? Okay, thank you. All right, now, and you'll notice how God gives everything, tells Moses everything. Do you wish that sometimes God did this for us in our lives? Every day when you got up, God said, okay, here's the plan.
Yeah.
He gets a big board like this. He says, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do this, you're going to do this. At 12 o'clock, you're going to do this, 11 o'clock. Y'all wish he'd done that?
Sometimes.
Do you ever feel like, Crystal and I had this conversation, do you ever feel like God's just sitting up there going, I hope he figures it out? He's probably not, but I hope he figures it out.
He's probably saying, ain't no way.
There's no way. Poor Sarah. Forget her, let's move on. Somebody else. No, I'm joking.
I mean all of us, not just you.
I mean, everybody sometimes feels like, okay, God, would you please get an airplane and ride it across the sky, what I need to do?
What do you want me to do?
What do you want me to do? But what's amazing is that God tells Moses everything. He gives him, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go say exactly what I want to tell you. If he says no, because he's going to say no, because I'm going to harden his heart, then this is what you got to do. And yet Moses still complains. He still bellyaches. So it's probably, God knows that if I tell them exactly what to do, they're still going to belly and complain. Okay? So, I done tried it once. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee. And Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he shall send the children of Israel out of his land. That's the only message. The only message you're going to say to Pharaoh is this: let my people go. But God has already told Moses he's not going to let him go because I'm going to harden his heart. All right? Keep that in mind. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart. It's almost like 10 steps forward, 1,000 steps back. Here's what you're going to do. All right? You're going to go up to him, you're going to tell him, let my people go, but he's not going to let him go because I'm going to harden his heart. Why would he even want to tell him that? Okay? This is interesting. I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Okay, you've got to remember this. When he talks about Egypt, he is talking about Ethiopia. He is talking about parts of Africa. He is talking about the Sudan. It is not just this little piece of dirt. All right? And all of these plagues are going to affect that entire country. Not just Goshen, the entire country. All right? Millions of people. Tens of millions of people. More than that, because you remember back then, that time, people lived a lot longer than they do now. So tens of millions of people are going to be affected by these plagues. It is not an isolated incident. Okay? It says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you. All right? That I may lay my hand upon Egypt. Look at that again. It says, but Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies. The way God would separate the children of Israel, he separated them in two groups. People that could carry a sword and just ordinary folks. When you would number, I think it's Chronicles, when they numbered people, and when they would number the tribes, they would say, okay, this is how many people we got that can carry a sword, and this is just a general population. So, he says, I'm going to bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And what are those judgments? The plagues, okay? Why didn't God just kill Pharaoh, kill the Egyptian army, and say, all right, guys, hit it?
So he could show his power.
Show his power. The reason that God judges and there's judgments is for God to display His power. And you would think that the children of Israel, after seeing all of this amazing power that God has, that when they got out into the wilderness, they would totally trust Him. They was no longer out in that wilderness. They started going, we got no water. We're hungry. I want to go back. Blah, blah, blah. Just started belly aching and griping. Okay? And He says, my judgments, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. The Egyptians. Where's Pharaoh in this? Why not Pharaoh? Heart's hardened. His heart's hardened. You see sovereignty there? And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. He keeps using that I am. We went over that, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I'm Jehovah, and there's nobody above me. I am the Lord when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. Okay? He's going to do that through plagues. And each plague, like I say, is going to represent a different Egyptian god. All right? And Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded them, so did they. And Moses was 80 years old, which is 80. And Aaron was 83 years old, which is 83. So Aaron was 3 years older than Moses. All right? So you got an 80-year-old man and an 83-year-old man going up to a guy that's probably in his 20s. Okay? All right? All right, Sonny, you going to let him go? All right? His heart has been hardened. According to Romans, do you know why he was raised up in the first place? To be a vessel of dishonor, to be a vessel of wrath. That is why he's been raised up. And God is going to harden his heart. That is an amazing God that He can do that. All right? Moses is 80. Yeah, it's in Romans. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think we went over that a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure. But let me see if I can find it quickly for you guys. It might be Romans 9. Here it is. Romans 9. Romans 9, verse 14. Let's start there. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? God forbid. Or that he screams out, no. There's no unrighteousness with God. For he saith to Moses, right, this is verse 15, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him, I got right there, or anybody, it is not of him, Romans 9, okay, 16. It is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. Who shows mercy to the lost? God. For the Scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose, one purpose, this is Scripture, have I raised thee up, and show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout the earth. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and on whom he will harden it. Okay? Verse 19. Thou wilt say unto me, because it's amazing that when Paul writes this, that Paul is basically saying, God is basically saying, I'll hold all the cards, you hold no cards. Okay? Don't belly ache and gripe when I start doing the things I want to do. Don't say I'm unfair. But Paul knows there's going to be people reading this, and they're going to go, that's not right. So he already has an answer in verse 19. You're going to say unto me, why doeth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Basically what he's saying is, that's not fair, Paul, that God can do that he can harden somebody's heart, and they have no chance of salvation. That's just not fair. And what Paul responds to, nay, but, oh man, you're just an individual, you're a man. I made you. I control your breath. I control your blood. I control your lungs. I control everything about you. I can do with you what I want to. You cannot question me. That's what he's basically saying. And the reason that this guy right here was raised up was for the sole purpose for God to show his judgment. Okay? Now. All right. 80 and 83. So remember, we got 40 the first time. The first 40 represents Moses in Egypt. The second 40 represents Moses in Midian. And then the second 40 represents Moses bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. Okay, 120 years old. His life's in 3 stages. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying, this is what you're going to do. When Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a miracle for you. What does unbelief always want? We talked about this Sunday. They always got to have more proof. I don't believe you, show me. And this goes back to the Old Testament. He is going to say, show me a miracle. I don't believe you. Unbelief, that is what the Pharisees, Pharaoh's just like the Pharisees. Every time God healed somebody, we don't believe you, show us something else. You're going to show us a sign? Show me something else. They've seen all the miracles of God, but still don't believe you, show me something else. So people can say, do you remember the rich man, the rich man that died and went to hell? What did he want? Raise somebody up from the dead. Give my brothers a great miracle, and when they see this great miracle, they're going to be saved. God's like, no, they're not. I mean, they got Moses, they got the prophets. I mean, I just raised a guy named Lazarus from the grave. They're not going to believe it. All right? Show me a miracle. Then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take the rod and cast it before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. All right, did y'all write this down? That is Exodus 7, 9, and 10. I should have put a 9 there. I'm sorry. 9 and 10. Boom. 9 and 10. Okay. Now, Exodus 9 and 10, we see a serpent. That is Hebrew, Taniah. In the Hebrew, that means that. It actually means land-dwelling beast or land-dwelling dragon, or sea-dwelling dragon, which is an interpreted crocodile. When you see the Ten Commandments and Charlton Heston and Aaron throw that rod down, what does it turn into? A snake. According to Hebrew, it turns into a crocodile. If you get a Strong's Concordance, go home, look it up. These are totally 2 different words. Okay? So keep that in mind, all right? Now, if you say, I still don't believe you, fine. I mean, seriously, it's just, that is, actually it says, and I got it written down here. Land dwelling, marine or land monster, dragon, crocodile. So when he throws it down, it goes into a crocodile, and we'll turn it over here in a minute. All right. The first time we talk about a serpent, we find it in Exodus 4:3. I'll go back there and look at that. In Exodus 4:3, it says, and he said, cast it on the ground, and he cast it on the ground. It became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. The word serpent in Hebrew is nakash. That means plain and simple snake. 2 different words. These are your Hebrew words for this. This and this are your Hebrew words. These are the meaning. This actually means land or a marine dweller. And it also says / dragon. Okay. And the one thing that Egypt has more than anything else is the Nile crocodile. All right. So that is what that means in Hebrew, crocodile and snake, 2 different things. Could you imagine standing there and he's got this, and he throws it down, it turns into a Nile croc? Okay, now that gets us to, wait a minute, let me read this. In Moses, verse 10, and Moses and Aaron, verse 10, went unto Pharaoh and did as the Lord had commanded, and Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent or crocodile. All right? I promise you, you go out and tell people we're studying this, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. That ain't what my Bible says. All right? No, you don't study the KJV. You have to look at this back in the Hebrew. All right? Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and the sorcerers. Now the magicians of Egypt, they also did in like manner with their enchantments. All right? 2 Timothy 3:8. We find out who these guys are. I think it's Jamrus or something like that. Jamis. Second, if somebody finds it before me. 2 Timothy 3:8. No, I got 2 Timothy. I got it. 2 Timothy 3:8 says, "Now Jannes and Jambres withstood Moses. So do these also resist the truth. Men of corrupt minds reprobate concerning the faith." The individuals that did this, we actually find their names in 2 Timothy 3:8. And they represent, they resist truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. So they actually resist Christ. Their corrupt minds are reprobate concerning faith. Now, these people are representative of what's going to be going on in the last days. If you want to know what's going to be going on in the last days, you can study Exodus. All right? Because guess who's going to be pulled up out of Exodus? The Hebrews. And we are grafted into the Hebrew nation, basically the church. We're going to be pulled out during the rapture. If you want to know what it's going to be like, you can study this. Or if you want to know what it's going to be like, you can study 2 Timothy chapter 3. Because it says, "This shall know in the last days, perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of themselves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient, perhaps unthankful, unholy," and the list goes on. He mentions these two individuals in verse 8. The two individuals that did the exact same miracle that Moses did. Do you know who they're representative of? Satan. Satan can do certain things, okay? He can do, of course, he's not like God as far as omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. He can't do any of that. But Satan can perform miracles, okay? Now, if this is a crocodile, all right,
Does it use the same Hebrew word for their serpents
yes,
here?
yes,
So theirs was crocodiles?
yes, yes, yes. It is actually, your Greek number will be, your Hebrew number for that is going to be number 8577. That's your Hebrew number for it. That's the Strong's number, your Greek. That's how you look up Old Testament words. All right. Now, where am I at? You remember we talked about how all of this affects certain gods, right? They had a god. His name, Sobek. Sobek. All right? He is the god. Sobek was connected with the Nile and protected the king. So, in verse 12, it says, "For they cast down every man his rod. They became serpents, and Aaron's rod swallowed up their," what? Rods. So if it's affecting their god, which is a god of the Nile, which is Sobek, god of Nile, god of the crocodiles, it is proven that God, his God, swallowed up their little bitty god. And this god actually had the head of a man, the man with the head of a crocodile and the headdress of feathers, which was representative of the, I call them cattails. It's in the, you know what I'm talking about. They're all over the Nile. And he also had a sun disk, which it went directly to a god by the name of Ra, which is Ra. We'll get into that later. So, Sobek, god of the Nile, okay, he is also going to be affected by another plague, the first plague, which is the water turning into blood. But he actually is affected in two ways. With the rod, when he is swallowed up, and then the god of the Nile, god of the crocodiles. They said that in his temple, they had temples built for each of these crocodiles, for each of these gods, that in his temple they had pools and pools and pools of live crocodiles in there. Okay? And they said for funsies, they would at night, they would get slaves and then make them run a gauntlet through that temple to see if any of them would not fall into the pools. So, very cruel people. Okay, anyway, they cast down the serpents, Aaron's rod swallowed up their gods, God's victory over Satan, and he hardened Pharaoh's heart and hearkened not unto them, as the Lord had said. You think that would have convinced you? What if God would have hardened your heart?
It wouldn't have.
Wouldn't. Why isn't people convinced today that Jesus Christ is Savior? Go anywhere in this community, Fairview. I guarantee you 99.9% of them say, you think Jesus Christ is Savior, they're going to give you one word. Yes, I do.
Raised that way.
Huh?
They were raised
Raised
that
that way.
Tradition.
Well, why aren't they followers? Where are they at? Why have we got so many empty seats on Sunday morning? Why is it every time a church door's open on Sand Mountain, people's not rushing in because we're in the Bible Belt? I think we're in the Bible Buckle.
They're told it's not necessary.
It's not, you go to church. You got time for church. And you know what happens every time? The heart becomes hardened. Becomes hardened. It becomes hardened. And it becomes hardened. And if they say, well, if I can just see a miracle, you witness a miracle every day.
Yeah,
You wake up, there's a miracle.
that's right.
I mean, the sun, the moon, the stars, all of it is an absolute miracle.
If you've got children, you look at miracles
Every
You look
day.
at one of them.
So God hardens, and he hardened his heart, just like with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he hearkened not to them as the Lord had said. And, verse 14, the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened, he refuses to let the people go. It's a shock. Turn my board back over. You have to give me a board turner. All right. Now, go to verse 15. Get thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. Lo, he goeth out unto the water. This was their ritual. And thou shalt stand by the river's bank against he come, and the rod which was turned into a serpent thou shalt take in thy hand. Now, this is what he done every morning. The Pharaoh would get this earthen vessel, this clay vessel, and he would get this water in it that was blessed by their sorcerers and by their magicians, and they would bless it, and he would go down and he would purify the Nile River. Okay? Now, the Nile to the Egyptians was the lifeblood. It is it. Actually, one Pharaoh called it the umbilical cord to the Egyptian nation, the Nile River. They depended everything. That was it, the Nile River. 95% of Egypt is dry, barren, dust, desert. But the Nile would overflood. Its banks would run miles and miles and miles into the desert. And they actually said that after the Nile would run over the banks, that the soot and the sediment is the richest in the world as far as growing stuff. Just some information. Now remember, this miracle is going to affect. I got a map. This actually is. I know you can't see it. Don't holler. I can't say that. This is Libya. This is Africa, Egypt, everything. The Nile starts. Actually, when we see a map like this, we think the Nile runs this way. In actuality, it runs up. Okay, and it empties into the Mediterranean Sea. It actually begins at Lake Victoria, which is in Africa, which is their largest freshwater lake, Lake Victoria. It starts at Lake Victoria and it runs out, and it has actually two tributaries. They call one of them the White Nile and one of them the Blue Nile. These branch off, and they actually run also into other smaller rivers. So the Nile actually starts in Lake Victoria, and then it runs and it covers 4,160 miles. So when this river is going to turn to blood, 4,160 miles of it does too. And in those little tributaries that break off, guess what happens to them? Same thing. The what now?
How many miles did you say?
4,160. It runs through Egypt, runs through the Sudan, it runs through parts of Africa, it just runs a gauntlet all the way. All right? And in actuality, if it starts at Lake Victoria and runs this way, and it empties out into the Great Sea or the Mediterranean Sea, guess what else turns to blood?
Mediterranean Sea does.
So you see how every bit of this is going to be affected. When we think about these miracles, we think it's a little isolated place. But when God says this, look, when God says that, verse 5, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt. All of it. Okay? And this is what happens. He says, I want you to go, and I want you to stand beside him when he's pouring out that water by the Nile. All right? And thou shalt say unto him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has sent me unto thee, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. And behold, hitherto thou wouldest not hear. Verse 17, thus saith the Lord, in this they shalt know that I am, there that word is again, I am the Lord. Behold, I will smite with the rod that is in my hand upon the waters which are in the river, and they shall be turned to blood. Now, that gets us back to this. All right? All of these gods are going to be affected by this. Okay, guys? Love my board. All right? I could have got all that on one side. I just like to spin it. One of these days, like on the Price is Right, and they do the wheel. All right? Now, and the fish, this is amazing to me. All right, look, you got Hapai. He is a god that, let me see if I can knock these off. And what's interesting, no one person or anything I've studied about this will say, well, he's the one that actually. So what they do, they know that these gods represent certain parts of the Nile, so they just all lump them in together saying, well, it don't affect just one god, it's going to affect a bunch of them. Okay? You have Hapai. All right? He is especially important because he brought the flood every year. The Nile would flood every year. So he was credited with this. They say that he would actually go down to the Nile and he could take the banks and he would bring them down. This is okay. And then the water would run over, and when he's seen that it was enough water, he would bring the banks back up. Okay? They believe. Okay? I know. All right. And the only way that they could grow their food is for this thing to flood. And if it did not flood, they starved to death. All right? So his name is Hapai. He had a man, and I have no idea why they want to describe him like this. He is a man with a pot belly, and he's got water plants on top of his head. All right? Okay. So this plague is going to destroy his reputation. All right? Now, there is another Osiris. Okay? He is actually the god of the dead. Okay? And they said that he actually had, his bloodstream was actually the Nile River. So if he's the god of the dead, and everything in the Nile is going to die, and everything in the Nile is going to turn to blood, it affects him also. Osiris. Osiris is the god of the dead. And they said that the Nile was actually his bloodstream. So it's going to affect him also. All right? Okay. There is another. We already went over this. Okay? So it's going to affect him also. Okay? Because he is considered the god of the Nile. All right? And it's also going to affect Cunan, which is a god that molded people on the great wheel. And he made the people from mud out of the Nile. See how stupid that is? All right? I think it's why I love studying this stuff, okay? Now, so you have these four gods. And this plague is going to affect, it's going to destroy them. They put all their hope into these gods. They put all their hope into this Nile River. And with just one touch, and all of it's going to be destroyed. All right? And the fish that is in the river shall die. All right. If you've got 4,160 miles of river, and not only that river, you've got the Blue Nile and you've got the White Nile, which splits off, and you've got Lake Victoria, which is sitting down here in Africa, which is the largest lake in the world. Okay? Freshwater lake. And then you've got this thing that's emptying into the Mediterranean at millions of gallons per second. Okay? It's going to affect how much you think that's a pretty good crop of fish that's going to be affected. It's going to be millions and millions and millions of fish. And not only fish, what else you got in there? You got crocodiles, you got turtles, everything. Anything that's got any type of gill is going to be affected by this. Imagine, and this is what he says. And the river shall stink. All right? They relied on this for everything. And it's amazing to me how God knows exactly how to affect them. He didn't send an earthquake, a tornado, a hurricane. He knew how to affect these people. And he knew where to show his judgment at. And he hit the lifeblood. And when that Pharaoh said, it's almost like the Nile is the Egyptians' umbilical cord, he was absolutely right. All right, we're going to quit here in just a second. And the fish that was in the rivers died, and the river stank, and the Egyptians shall loathe to drink the water of the river. Doesn't say they're not going to. What else are they going to drink? Because I want you to look what else. And the Lord said unto Moses, say unto Aaron, take thy rod, stretch it out upon the waters of Egypt, upon the streams, upon the rivers, upon the ponds, upon their pools of water. It's everything. If you was living back during this time, you go to the well to get you some water up, it's going to be blood. If you had showers, you get in the shower, going to turn it on, it's going to be blood. No water. And this is infecting an entire nation. Africa, Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, everybody. Millions and millions of people. Do you know that this is actually going to happen again? It's going to happen in the 7-year tribulation. It's going to be much worse because we're much more spoiled than they was. All right? Every ounce of water, every ounce is going to be affected. They don't have any water. What about them little babies? Don't they need some water? I mean, everything's going to be affected. The fish they can't eat fish. Got no fish. They can't do anything. They can't cook because you cook with water. You can't boil it. You can't do anything. All right. So, how many streams? We're not only the Blue Nile and the White Nile. Those are the main streams that run off. I'm talking about little teeny little old podunk streams. How many thousands is in there? How many thousands of ponds did they have? How many? You've got well water. How many whales was affected? Could you see how devastating this is? And on top of that, you got all these fish that's floated to the top. 4,000 miles of fish floating to the top. They can't eat them. All right? Wow. I want you to look. That there may be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and vessels of stone. Do you know what they did as soon as that water started turning to blood? Start gathering up. Huh? Didn't do no good. I remember when it came to, every time it comes a tornado or a snowstorm or something, you always say, fill up jugs of water. We ain't no time we're going to be out in water. That's exactly what they done. Could you imagine them little old kids going there and getting their jugs? They set them up. Hey, Mom, we're fine. Got 20 jugs back there. We're going to be fine as soon as they start pouring it out. It's blood. No water anywhere. All right? We're going to stop there.